for me?
Sure, I'll make another one, no problem. Okay, well, all right, that thing faded off. I thought there was something I needed to do, and it is. It's get in front of the camera and start teaching. Welcome, everybody. My name is Dennis Levin. I'm a retired pastor here at Queen Street United Methodist Church in downtown Kinston, and welcome to our weekly Bible study. I did live stream, or I uploaded a stream to YouTube. Not everybody was able to view that. So were you able to view that?
I did.
See, some people were able to view that. If you have not been able to view it, and you probably can't view this, you go to the church's website, Queen Street's website, go to their YouTube feed, and then you subscribe to the YouTube feed. And then you should be able to get everything that's there. So I think we resolved everything on our end. It's just that you need to have that extra access in order to get to the lessons and the worship at Queen Street. Okay, so last time I told you that in preaching you tell them what you're going to tell them, then you tell them, then you tell them what you told them. So we're going to do that with chapter 12. We're going to go over that again, and just because I don't want anybody to miss this part of it. Chapter 12 is actually the central part of Exodus. It is the defining moment for the Jewish people, and is today as they celebrate Passover. So chapter 12 is all about the Passover ritual and the Passover event. The two are not the same, okay? One of them is the event, and the other one is how to celebrate the event so that it stays in the memory of the people. So here we go. Hi, welcome, Mel. Okay. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, "This month shall mark for you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year for you. Tell the whole congregation of Israel that on the 10th of this month they are to take a lamb for each family, a lamb for each household. If a household is too small for a whole lamb, it shall join its closest neighbor in obtaining one. The lamb shall be divided in proportion to the number of people who eat of it. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a year-old male. You may take it from the sheep or from the goats. You shall keep it until the 14th day of this month." Okay, here's the problem. Huh? I'm in chapter 12, verse 6.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay? You shall keep it until the 14th day of this month. Now, here's the problem. Moses has already stomped into Pharaoh and told Pharaoh that this thing is going to happen, and, or he's told the people that on this night, you better be ready to go. You better have this lamb prepared and everything this night. The problem is that they're saying now you need to keep the lamb for 14 days. So there's a disconnect. So in the event that's described, there is no 14-day waiting period, but in the ritual to remember the event, there is a 14-day waiting period, okay? Because Moses basically told the people, it's going to happen tonight, so grab your lamb, And but what we're seeing here is a rewrite for the ritual purpose. Then the whole assembled congregation of Israel shall slaughter it at twilight. All right. What's going on there? Okay. Okay, I'm going to bring it in now. So much of what's going on in Passover has translated into Christian tradition. So for many Christians, the celebration of the Lord's Supper and our understanding of Maundy Thursday and Easter, and Maundy Thursday, Good Friday, and Easter is tied into our understanding of Passover, and we claim Christ as our Paschal Lamb, okay? So what we're claiming is that Christ is akin to the events that happened in the death of Christ are akin to the slaughter of this lamb, the imposition of blood for the protection of the people. All of that imagery is in our Christian tradition, but it derives from this Passover event. Okay? Now, here's where it gets complicated for Christians. Okay? When we celebrate the Lord's Supper, especially when we're doing it during Holy Week, most people consider that it is a reenactment of sorts of the Passover meal, where Jesus passes the bread and the wine to his disciples. Okay? 3 of the Gospels, the Synoptics, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, all concur that the Lord's Supper is a reenactment of the Passover meal. John's Gospel, on the other hand, does not concur with that. John's Gospel says that this meal that Jesus had, the Last Supper, was what they call the Feast of Preparation, which is something you do the night before Passover. Okay? So, what's going on with John's Gospel is that Passover for the Jews on that week took place at twilight, at sundown on Friday. And that Jesus, like the Paschal Lamb, was slaughtered on Friday. Okay? So, John's Gospel, the first 3 Gospels were written by Gentile Christians. John's Gospel is written by somebody who is very much rooted in Jewish tradition and understands Jewish tradition better. His representation of Jewish tradition in that Gospel is much more faithful to actual Jewish tradition. So, from my standpoint, I tend to go with John's Gospel, that the Last Supper was the Feast of Preparation, and that Christ was crucified on a remarkable convergence of Passover and Sabbath, which does not always happen. It's a lunar situation. So this is a very rare event. And the Jews did not want Jesus' body or anybody's body hanging on crosses on a high holy day. And that's the reason why they, with haste, took the bodies down off the cross. There was a request by the Sanhedrin that they remove the bodies from the crosses. And it would make sense that they would want to do that on a Sabbath that was also Passover.
Wow. So did they remove the two as well?
Yeah, they didn't want any people hanging on crosses on
So should I
Sabbath.
already know, I should have known that.
It doesn't mention the other bodies.
Right, that is
Okay.
the first time, yeah, I've always thought.
But the general, yeah, it wasn't Jesus in particular, they just didn't want any dead bodies hanging on crosses on a high holy
So
day.
it was, I should have known through all my Christian life that Jesus was crucified during Passover.
Yeah,
Is that what you're?
no, it's not that you should have, there's not,
That's
the
first
thing
time I've
is,
ever heard.
there is a disconnect among the Gospels about the timing of the event.
Okay, some say it was and some say it wasn't.
Some say that the meal was a Passover meal,
Uh-huh,
and the other one says it's a Feast of Preparation, and they're saying, if you say that it was the Passover meal on Maundy Thursday, then Passover happened on Maundy Thursday. But if you look at John's Gospel and you see that it's the Feast of Preparation, at which there would have been bread and wine nonetheless, okay, without the ritual of Passover. You didn't see any of the ritual of Passover taking place in any of the Gospels, really. So that's another indicator that maybe that was the Feast of Preparation.
Okay,
That's
so you're saying that the Passover meal that's here in chapter 12,
Yes.
okay, they did this on Thursday evening?
No. There's no specified day of the week in Exodus.
Okay, but this Passover meal was like the Last Supper that Jesus and his disciples had before he was crucified?
Most Christians understand that when we partake in the sacrament, especially on Holy Week, that we are reenacting Passover. And I have been to Maundy Thursday services where they actually did a reenactment of Passover. Okay?
Wow.
Well, we've had a meal when we reenacted,
Yes,
yeah.
right. But
And
I'm,
this was during Passover week,
yes,
when Christ was crucified.
it
That
was.
during Passover
Yeah,
week.
the issue is like one day off.
Right,
between
and
the
whether it was
Gospels.
on a Thursday or a Friday,
Correct.
depending on which.
Yeah, but it makes much more sense, and it makes much more sense from the standpoint, if you're trying to look at what the crucifixion of Jesus was accomplishing, it makes much more sense for that to have been a Passover event.
I think you said you adopt John's
I do,
version.
yes.
And also, I think you said that John was a Jew.
John was very familiar with Jewish tradition. He was much more
so
accurate,
than
more so than the Synoptic
the, right.
Gospels. Okay, John did not base his gospel on the same sources as the other gospels as well. Okay, the reason why they're called the Synoptics is that they had a common background material that they all drew from. And that was, you'll see quotes in the three gospels where they use the same verbiage and the same event, maybe not in the same time frame. Things get scrambled. But in John's gospel, there is an entirely different understanding, Jewish understanding of what's going on. And his explanation, I think, is much better.
So it was very intentional with the New Testament to, that Jesus' death was related to the, I mean, this is what they were talking about.
Whether or
This
not
was
you,
part-
yeah, whether or not you subscribe to the Last Supper being a Passover meal, okay? Christian understanding is that the function of Jesus' death on the cross was derived from the sacrifice of the Paschal Lamb for the sake of the people.
And it's believed that Mark was the first gospel written, right?
It's, well, there's debate on that, but of the synoptics, Mark is the oldest.
And everybody took from him.
And they.
Yeah, no, they didn't take from him. There was another document that we do not have, and it's called Quelle, or Q. We refer to, scholars refer to it as Q, and Q, Quelle means story, and in German. And they, all right, I'm gonna delve into something.
Oh, boy.
Okay, here we go. All right. The New Testament was written primarily in Greek. Okay? It was not written by court officials or by Jewish officials. But you wanted to get the story down. So outside of that officialdom, who was literate and writing? What was writing used for, primarily?
That's the story down.
No scribes, no Pharisees. They're not writing this story. You go to someone who can write it down.
Right.
Okay.
Who's writing stuff down? Besides scribes, Pharisees, court officials, and all that.
Their secretaries,
They're secretaries, that's correct.
Ah!
That's exactly right.
their secretaries.
Right,
So the secretaries wrote.
yes, okay, now, they are basically accountants, okay? So you've all dealt with accountants. They want to know
The facts.
what happened, what are the facts, okay? So they will say to a disciple, tell me some of the stories about Jesus, and I'll write them down. So they would write down the stories of Jesus as the disciples remembered them, okay? And as they were conveyed to this accountant. How do accountants list things?
Numbers.
In lists, okay? So we suspect that Q was a source document derived from the stories from disciples who passed it on to other people, who passed it on to the accountant, okay? And the accountant wrote it down as they told it to them, which means that you did not have it in sequence. Okay? So the stories of Jesus are just the stories.
We have no idea how they, what order they happened.
We don't know what order they happened in, but the three synoptic gospels drew their source material, a lot of it, from the Q document, without any context of when and where that happened. So in one you might have Jesus clearing the temple in the early part of his ministry, and others you have him in the latter part of his ministry. You don't know.
Wow.
You don't know where these things happen. And that's why there's a lot of disconnect. One of the reasons why there's a lot of disconnect between, amongst the three gospels.
Okay, I have always heard between the Baptist and the Methodist religion that everything in the Bible was gospel, that it all came from God, it
Yes.
was all ordained by God.
Yes,
Okay, so what you're saying is God spoke through John, who told Frank, who Frank told Dennis.
Yep.
And Dennis told Tammy.
all of the
He wrote it
gospels,
down.
all of the gospels, to our knowledge, were written well after the death of the original disciples.
Right,
Mhm.
but
But it was still
It was-
God.
The story, what they want you to learn is there,
That's true, and each one wants you to know a different part of the story.
right? So you get
Mark-
full-
Mark basically wants you to know the history of what was going on.
But what we
okay.
do know is that through time,
Yeah.
the interpretation of what has been said
Oh, big time.
has been changed tremendously.
The interpretation is always changing and is today,
So when people.
as you can tell by what's going on in the United Methodist Church. So, yeah,
So when people read the Bible, some people read, this is what happened because it's in the Bible.
Yeah.
This way.
right, except for the other part of the Bible that said it didn't happen that way.
Right.
Okay.
Again, as Alan used to say, the big T's
And the little T's.
The big truths.
Big truth, little truth. Actually, I said that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Alan can have it too.
Oh, I'll change it now.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what I have to always go back to.
Right. Right, there's a big truth, a big central truth that is forever true, and then there are little truths that have to do with the details of the story.
And we believe the big T.
We
Right.
believe the big
We
T,
believe the big T.
right, and as we find ourselves going through events in life, we can find things in the little T's that give us ideas about how to deal with it, or how to interpret the big T, you know?
But everybody has their own interpretation of the.
Yes, but
the
you're,
little T's are the people's interpretation of what
that,
transpired at that time.
right, but the thing is, no matter how you look at it, you need to be at least honest enough to say that I recognize that not everything in there is consistent, and that, who knows, I might be wrong. You know? And it also gives me pause, so that I will not take someone who has a different understanding of those little T's and burn them at the stake. Okay?
Right.
Well, theologians have always confused everything anyway, so.
Well, that's what I'm trying to do now.
And you're doing a good job.
Yes,
You get an A.
yeah. But anyway, I want you to know that this story is not just central to Jews, it is central to Christianity as well. And we
Well, I thought-
derive our theology of redemption from this heritage.
I thought Passover was a particular day.
It is, it says so right there, the month shall
Well,
mark for
this
you
is
the beginning of
First time
months.
I've ever heard that the Last Supper coincides with Passover. I don't know why, maybe I'm just
I mean,
ignorant.
Jesus said, I thought that
That's
Jesus'
why
last
he
week
came
was
to
always the
Jerusalem.
Passover.
Passover.
It's the Passover week. Yeah.
Well, you have to understand, in the ritual, what we're seeing here is a ritual of how to celebrate the event. And this ritual includes a 14-day period. And there's a period, like for instance, getting all the leaven out of your house, all the leavening out of your house. That, that's something that takes place over a period of time. Everybody searches through. It's kind of the fun thing, you know, it's like hide and seek in the house. Who can find the yeast and, you know, that kind of stuff. But that takes time. The event, the historical event as it's portrayed here, is something that happened like that.
Because it had to.
It had to,
Yeah.
I mean,
right.
we're doing it right now.
Yeah, that's what Moses was telling his people. We're doing it right now. But so you have a blending here. Understand now, this is being written by people who are trying to reconstitute their identity while they are in captivity in the Persian Empire. So they are trying to reconstitute the rituals that go along with their history.
This is a biased, well,
Yeah, everything is biased. The only thing that we believe that God ever wrote in the Bible were the Ten Commandments.
So everything else is,
The hand of man.
and their interpretation.
Mhm.
Exactly, and what they feel like God is telling them
Exactly.
to say.
Mark's gospel tries to convey succinctly a history of the life of Christ. Okay? Matthew's gospel is trying to convey that this Jesus is the fulfillment of Old Testament prophecy, even if we have to stretch some prophecies to make that match. Okay? Luke's gospel, which continues in Acts, okay, is designed to assuage the Roman Empire, that the Christian movement is not hostile to the Roman Empire. So
It's a
each one of those
politician.
gospels, yes, each one of those gospels has a different purpose for being written, okay? John's gospel was written because of the heresies that were taking place in early Christianity. And the idea of John's gospel is to try to coalesce what we should be believing about Christ.
Mhm.
Incarnation, primarily. His is very much about incarnation. So each one has a separate purpose. So each one is written a different way. And while Q was there for the synoptics, it's not there for all the source material that the writers were using. So there are places where they diverge.
What were you saying about incarnation?
John's gospel is about Jesus being the Son of God,
Right.
okay? Eternal, before he came, all right? Came here. Matthew's gospel is that Jesus is the fulfillment of the messianic expectation of the people.
so he didn't believe that he was.
No, he did. But
Oh,
that wasn't
okay.
the that wasn't the primary central
Okay,
theme.
sorry, okay.
Right. Right. They all agree that Jesus was the Son of God.
Okay,
All of them do. Some of them have different ways of explaining it. You know, in Matthew and Luke, you have the virgin birth, and in Mark, you don't. And in John, you don't. So they all have different ways of conveying it.
That's the only thing that I understand out of all of this is that
no,
Jesus is God's son. I'm just so totally
No.
confused.
But how he came to be that is portrayed differently in Gospels.
But you brought up an interesting point to me a while ago when you were talking about when it started here and they told somebody, and finally got to the secretary. When you look at some of this, the 14 days, you can only roast the lamb over fire. How much storytelling, maybe that's not the right word, but how much was added from where it started here till it got here to make it maybe sound more interesting?
A lot.
A lot, yeah.
And not only that, but you had what we call redactors, who are editors. And each has their purpose. Like, for instance, the purpose of the person who wrote the first part of chapter 12 was to make sure that this event was not forgotten. And you're going to celebrate it, and this is specifically how you're going to do it. And you'll see more of that as you get further into chapter 12.
So it could be everybody really didn't roast their pig at the same time, some of them could have.
Not a pig, it wouldn't be
I mean, a
that.
lamb.
Yeah. We all agree on
It's a
that.
hog business.
Well, you understand now, this is North Carolina, and when we roast things, it's gonna be pig, so, you know,
We can just pretend.
Yeah.
You know, we write our gospel.
right.
It's kind of the same thing with the way, and the way our history, like our United States history was written.
Yes, I have a
White
whole
people.
library full of books that differ with each other on how things took place.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Same thing,
Yeah, but,
Yes,
but our writers wrote it themselves,
yeah.
which to me takes away, when you have somebody else writing what you're saying and doing
Oh.
it takes away from the validity of what you've written,
okay, I'll give you an example,
okay?
okay? My daughter just gave me 2 volumes of the memoirs of Winston Churchill on World War II.
Mhm.
The 2 volumes were published by Time Life Books.
Hmm.
And they admit that they edited some of the things that Churchill said.
Well, that's what the editors do.
That's what editors do, okay?
To make it more interesting.
No, to make it either more verifiable or
flow.
less.
I'm sad. I wish growing up, I had known more about the history of the black people in our country than I did.
Oh, yeah,
And I feel like I'm learning more in the last 10 years, 15 years, whatever, than I've ever known in my life. And I thought I knew a lot,
I would recommend to you that you go to the state park for Jamestown, okay? And if you really want to know about 1619, go to the state park in Jamestown, and you will get a very good representation, not only of what happened in 1619, but of the cultures that from the black community, from African culture, and what they brought to this country.
Right.
There's an awful lot in there about that, and I think it's a wonderful display,
And
very
I'm not
balanced.
saying, we shouldn't, I'm not trying to say we should feel guilty or, be chastised because, it just wasn't, we didn't know.
Okay.
There was so much we didn't know.
Yeah, well, we're getting off track here, but you're
I'm
right.
sorry, I'm
That's okay,
sorry.
that's okay. So let's see if we can pick it up.
I'm sorry.
No, good.
But I
These
feel
are.
like it's the same kind of thing,
Mhm. Oh, our history is constantly redacted. I mean, every once in a while, I'll give a presentation about Braxton Bragg or maybe the battles of Fort Fisher to the Sons of the Confederacy. And if you want to see somebody who's redacted history, take a look at what they're saying. So, yeah.
Okay, sorry,
Mhm.
I digress.
Okay. They shall take some of the blood and put it on the 2 doorposts and the lintel of the houses in which they eat it. Okay, that's very significant for us because this is kind of the origins of where we're thinking about blood sacrifices. Although it goes all the way back to before Abraham, there were blood sacrifices being made. But in Abraham's experience, you had a situation where he was supposed to sacrifice his son, and an angel provided a lamb there, and or a ram, and he sacrificed the ram instead. But somebody's blood had to get shed, and so this is no different. It's in the same character. At that time, they had no altar to sacrifice things on, okay? But they put the blood on the doorpost. Now, did God know where the Jews lived without the blood on the doorpost? Well, obviously, because he shielded them from other plagues. So why were they putting the blood on the doorpost?
Symbolic.
Symbolic, yes, and also as a way for them to identify themselves.
To not
To
hide
whom?
anymore.
To whom?
To themselves. Remember, they're trying to form a coherent community.
So they're saying to each other, I am one of God's chosen.
Yes, I am following the instructions of this God.
My faith is beginning.
My faith is beginning, okay? And I demonstrate that faith by putting blood on the doorpost.
I want my friends to know about it.
That's true. On the other hand, when Jesus heals somebody in the New Testament, very often Jesus says, your faith has made you whole. Your faith, okay? So when they put the blood on the doorpost, this was a demonstration of faith.
My faith, I can't live on your faith.
I have to acknowledge my faith, and I want others to know my faith.
Yes,
I'm proud, I mean, I'm not afraid
to
to,
demonstrate it, right. And this is also a way of defying Egypt and Pharaoh. So they have to be in on the insurrection. And this is a way of, like if you're going out and demonstrating someplace, you might want to put an armband on or something like that.
So I was asked a question that probably is irrelevant, but it wasn't just those people that left, there were some Egyptians that left with the Israelites.
Oh, there were all kinds of people, a lot of Greeks.
So they didn't do any kind of sign or anything, they just fell in with the group when they left?
That's the description of what happened, yes. And you will see, as especially in the book of Joshua, you will see that there are a lot of Gentile communities that are associated with the invasion of Canaan and supported it. So it was not exclusively a Jewish event.
wow.
Just, there you go. All right, but blood was shed, and when we look at Jesus on the cross, blood was shed. The symbolism carries forth. Okay. They shall eat the lamb the same night. They shall eat it roasted over the fire with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. Why the bitter herbs? Everybody know what the symbolism of bitter herbs is in Passover? It is to remind them of their bitter slavery. Okay? Do not eat any of it raw or boiled in water, but roasted over the fire, its head, its legs, and inner organs. Okay, and there are some organs that are edible and some that ain't. Okay, so there's going to be something left over, but they're not allowed to leave any leftover. We were talking about leftovers before class. And they weren't supposed to have any. You don't keep leftovers because you're not going to be around to eat them. Okay? You shall let none of it remain until morning. Anything that remains until the morning you shall burn with fire. So you're not going to leave it for you or anybody else. This is how you shall eat it. Your loins girded, your sandals on your feet, your staff in your hand, and you shall eat it hurriedly. It is the Passover of the Lord. No pajama party here.
Okay, so I thought they were leaving in the middle of the night.
They were leaving shortly after the meal.
So they knew then that they had to burn.
Yeah,
everything. So
yeah,
this-
no leftovers. You're not going to be here for breakfast. That was the implication.
Well, it says don't leave it till the next morning.
There you go.
They're gonna be there for the next morning, but they're not.
Yep. Okay. So they got to be they have to eat it ready to go. You shall let none of it remain until the morning. Okay, this is how you shall eat it. Your loins girded. Okay, I said that. I will pass through the land of Egypt that night and will strike down every firstborn in the land of Egypt, from human to animal. And on all the gods of Egypt I will execute just judgments. I am the Lord. So now he's not targeting Pharaoh exclusively. He is targeting all the gods of Egypt. There aren't any of them. There aren't any of them that supersede me. Okay? Now, okay. If our God says, I will execute judgment on all the gods of Egypt, then the gods of Egypt are not fiction.
Well, they weren't fiction to the people anyway.
That's correct.
Because they were worshiping those gods.
Right. There is, we look at our religion as very, very, very monotheistic. There is only one God. Okay? There is only one God. All right? Here, God is acknowledging the existence of other gods because he's going to punish them. How do you punish a fictitious God?
But they never were fictitious. I mean, they were always, God always, to me, he's constantly mad at his people because they're worshiping other gods.
Yeah.
But
Right.
to him, they were real too. There were obviously somebody, okay, what?
Yes. it's very hard to explain, but you have to understand that this is the initial phase of monotheism. Okay, so you have one God superseding all other gods. The Ten Commandments don't tell you that there are no other gods. The Ten Commandments says, have no other gods before me.
And obviously, they had other gods before him, so.
Okay, well, some,
That's
those,
important enough to
yes,
put in there. I
that's
mean,
right,
So
That's
how
right.
is he gonna punish the other gods?
if they don't exist.
Yeah.
But they do exist,
How do they exist?
In the
in my,
minds of the
in your
people.
minds.
In the
Or
minds
in
of the
minds
people.
We're worshiping this God, I mean, it's the same, no, it's not the same thing. They have an idol, they have something that they see,
Yes,
whereas now God, you cannot see.
yes. The punishment for the gods of Egypt is that they are discredited.
That they can't do for you what I can do for you.
That's right. The
They
gods
might
of
be able to
Egypt
do a
have
little
no
bit of
power.
something, but not all that I can do.
Okay, but remember now, we're going in phases, okay? If I can discredit the gods of Egypt, then the gods of Egypt don't have power. And if the gods of Egypt don't have power, are they gods anyway?
No.
No,
That's, okay, but you
That's
see,
where
you have
he's
to
trying
take
to
people,
get there.
you have to take people to that
right,
conclusion.
exactly. They have thought all their lives that these are the gods,
Yes,
but all of a sudden, there is a God that's showing up.
yes, discrediting the other gods,
Right.
And for the Old Testament, he has to do that over and over.
Right.
right?
It's, they're slow learners.
Well, I mean, that's all I've ever known.
The power that gods have is the power, is exercised through the belief of the people in those gods.
But yeah,
And what God is trying to destroy is their belief in those gods. Once you destroy the beliefs in the gods, then they don't exist.
But it's like those several people that didn't believe, that believed in God.
Yeah.
They no longer believed in those gods.
Right.
They were the faithful ones from the very beginning. They
Right.
were just
I mean, there's a
like
whole
them.
panoply of Greek and Roman gods that we don't worship anymore. I get on the Pantheon roller coaster at Busch Gardens, but that's as close as I get. Okay, so,
you can't turn a ship around. I mean, it's like turning a ship.
it is like turning a ship, and you're turning a whole culture, okay? And I didn't get very far, and we're way over time.
And I wonder how I would have felt, what team I would have been, you know what I'm saying, back then.
But that's all they knew.
What's what I'm
Yeah.
I
saying,
mean, that's
yeah.
all they knew at that point.
Right.
But
Okay,
it's
well,
hard to
we're,
believe that- It's hard to believe that they had a God that would tell them to sacrifice their own children and they would do it.
yes, it's hard to believe that, but then again, look at all the things that have been done even in the name of the God we worship.
Absolutely. You're
Amen.
exactly right. Mhm.
All right, now, we have not scratched the surface. We have only been talking about the ritual about the event. We haven't even gotten into the event. So
We're a tough
we're gonna be in
crowd.
chapter 12 for a while, folks. I can just tell you
We're
that.
a tough crowd.
We are a tough crowd, and I'm glad you are.
But I did, in the last time, we'll get to that, I'm sure, but I was very interested in all the parts you said about the children and how they were
Mhm.
excluded and how they are included.
Yeah, please get on, if you haven't seen the video of this class presentation before, log on to the YouTube part of Queen Street and go ahead and look at it. Because without you, I got a lot further into this.
I didn't notice
It
that.
took us 2 years to go through Genesis.
Yeah, well, that was fast. Okay, well, God bless you all, and I will see you again next week.
Now and Corbin,